The rain fell softly that evening, a curtain of silver that blurred the noise of the world. Inside the small, flickering church, Amara stood in her simple white gown. No pearls, no diamonds, just a trembling bouquet of lilies clutched in her hand. The whispers echoed through the wooden pews like the hiss of snakes. Why would she marry him? One woman sneered quietly. She's throwing her life away, another whispered. Look at him, poor and crippled. She must be desperate. Their laughter cut deeper than any blade. But Amara kept her eyes fixed on the man waiting at the altar. David sat in his wheelchair, his calm, unreadable gaze fixed on her. He wore no expensive suit, no fancy tie, just a clean white shirt and an old brown jacket that had clearly seen better days. Yet there was something in his eyes, something no one else saw, a quiet strength, a stillness that seemed to know things the world didn't. When she reached him, David smiled. "You sure about this?" he asked softly. Amara's voice didn't waver. "More sure than I've ever been." The priest spoke the vows, and as they exchanged rings, thunder rolled above them, shaking the sky like a warning. But Amara didn't flinch. She had made her choice, not out of pity, but out of love. Outside, after the ceremony, the whispers turned into open mockery. Guests shook their heads. Her friends avoided eye contact. Even her own mother refused to attend. "He can't even walk, Amara," her mother had said days before. "What kind of future can he give you?" But Amara believed in something deeper. She'd met David at the hospital where she volunteered. He was kind, brilliant, and mysterious. The way he listened made her feel seen, not pitted. He never spoke of his past, never mentioned his family, or why he was always surrounded by men who seemed too watchful for a poor man. She had fallen in love with his soul, not his secrets. The first few months of marriage were hard. They lived in a small, run-down apartment. The walls peeled. The nights were cold. David refused any financial help, surviving on a modest income from his remote work, which Amara didn't fully understand. His office door was always locked. Still, he treated her like a queen. Every morning, he'd wake early, make her breakfast, and roll his wheelchair beside her as they ate in silence. Sometimes, she'd catch him staring out the window, lost in thought. "David," she once asked, "what are you thinking about?" He smiled faintly. "About a promise I made long ago." She didn't ask more. Some silences felt sacred. One afternoon, while cleaning, Amara found a photograph tucked inside one of his old books. It was David, standing tall, surrounded by men in suits, beside a private jet. Her heart froze. The man in the center was her husband, smiling confidently, no wheelchair in sight. When David came home, she confronted him, her voice trembling. "Who are you, really?" He looked at her for a long time, then sighed. "Someone I used to be." Before she could press further, a loud knock echoed through the apartment. 3 men in black suits stood at the door. They didn't look like friends. David's expression hardened instantly. "Pack a bag," he told her calmly. "We're leaving." Amara's hand shook. "Leaving? David, what's going on?" He didn't answer. He just rolled to a drawer, unlocked it, and pulled out a sleek silver laptop and a thick envelope of cash. The men outside knocked again, louder, more urgent. "David," she whispered, terrified. "Who are they?" He looked at her, eyes blazing with a quiet intensity she'd never seen before. "The past," he said simply. Moments later, they slipped out the back door, the sound of footsteps following close behind. David wheeled himself faster than she thought possible, every turn precise, every movement planned. He wasn't panicking. He was executing a strategy. They reached an abandoned warehouse by the river, where David finally stopped. He pulled out his phone and made a single call. "It's me," he said sharply. "Activate Protocol 17 and send the car." Amara stared at him, her heart pounding. "David, please, what's happening? You're scaring me." He turned toward her slowly. "Amara, the truth is, I wasn't always the man you met in that hospital." Lightning flashed through the cracked windows, illuminating his face. Suddenly older, heavier with secrets. "I used to run one of the biggest companies in West Africa, until the people I trusted tried to destroy me. They wanted my technology, my research, my company. The accident that put me in this wheelchair wasn't an accident at all. It was a setup. They thought they'd killed me. Amara's breath caught in her throat. Killed you? He nodded. I let them believe I was gone. I disappeared. Started over. Until you... Her mind spun, trying to piece it together. So those men... They found out I'm alive, he said grimly. And they won't stop until they finish what they started. A black SUV screeched to a halt outside the warehouse. 2 bodyguards stepped out and hurried toward them. Sir, one of them said, the safe house is ready. David turned to Amara. You trusted me when I was nothing, when everyone laughed at you. Now it's my turn to protect you, no matter what it takes. She stared at him, this man who had been both a mystery and a miracle, and realized the truth wasn't just shocking, it was terrifying. They drove into the night, the city lights fading behind them. Amara's heart pounded as she tried to process everything. The wedding, the whispers, the photo, the chase. Beside her, David was silent, staring out the window, lost in thoughts she couldn't reach. But somewhere deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning, because secrets like David's don't stay buried forever. And as the black SUV disappeared into the storm, a phone rang in the hands of a man, watching from the shadows, his cold smile glinting in the lightning. Found him, he said quietly. And this time he won't escape. Continue from here. The rain intensified, slamming against the windows of the speeding SUV as if the storm itself wanted to drag them back. The driver's knuckles were white against the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the winding road ahead. Amara sat frozen beside David, her thoughts a blur of disbelief and fear. The man she'd loved, cared for, defended, was no longer who she thought he was. The image of that confident man in the photograph burned behind her eyes. David glanced at her, his expression softening. I know it's a lot to take in, he said quietly, his voice barely audible over the sound of the rain. But you have to believe me. Everything I did was to stay alive. Amara turned toward him, her voice shaking. David, you lied to me. From the beginning. How can I believe anything now? His jaw tightened. Because if I hadn't, you wouldn't be sitting here right now. The tension between them was thick, heavy. Every second stretched painfully. She wanted to yell, to cry, to ask him why he never trusted her with the truth. But something in his eyes, that same calm steadiness that had drawn her to him in the hospital, stopped her. Beneath the layers of secrets, that same soul remained. The car jolted suddenly as the driver swerved to avoid a fallen branch. David's hand instinctively reached for hers, gripping it tightly. We're almost there, he said, his tone low and certain. Where? She whispered. He hesitated, then answered. Somewhere no one will find us. For now. Minutes later. The SUV pulled off the main road and down a narrow dirt path lined with thick trees. The headlights cut through the darkness until a small cabin appeared ahead, hidden by the forest. The driver killed the engine and silence settled, thick, heavy, almost suffocating. The 2 guards stepped out first, scanning the surroundings. One gave a curt nod. Clear, sir. David turned to Amara. You go in first. She hesitated but obeyed, her shoes sinking into the damp earth as she stepped toward the cabin. The door creaked open, revealing a modest interior. A single lamp, a wooden table, and a faint smell of pine. She glanced back as David wheeled himself inside, his guards following silently before locking the door behind them. The moment felt surreal. Just hours ago, she had been cleaning their tiny apartment. Now, she was in a hidden safe house, running from faceless men who wanted her husband dead. David rolled toward the table and opened his laptop. The screen's blue light cast strange shadows across his face. His fingers moved fast, too fast for a man who'd once claimed to be retired. Strings of code, encrypted messages, and satellite images flashed across the screen. Amara stood behind him, stunned. What are you doing? Tracking them, he murmured. They found us faster than expected. That means there's a leak. A leak? She echoed. David, this is a movie. You're talking about people trying to kill you. He didn't look up. Exactly why I can't afford to stop. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the laptop and the steady patter of rain. Finally, Amara exhaled and sank onto the couch, wrapping her arms around herself. You said they tried to destroy your company. What was it? What were you working on that made them go this far? David paused, his fingers hovering above the keyboard. A system, he said at last. One that could change how data moves. Safer, faster, completely unhackable. Governments wanted it. Corporations wanted it. But I refused to sell. So they took everything instead. Amara stared at him, realization dawning slowly. And the people after you now, they want it back. He nodded. Or want to make sure no one else ever gets it. Outside, thunder rolled again, long and deep. One of the guards stepped closer to the window. Movement, he whispered. David immediately shut his laptop. Lights out. The room plunged into darkness. Amara's heart thudded violently as she felt David's hand brush hers. Stay close, he murmured. Through the rain-smeared glass, faint headlights glowed in the distance, approaching fast. The guards drew their weapons, tension thick enough to choke on. Then came the crunch of tires over gravel. The car stopped. Silence. David's breathing remained steady. They found us, he whispered. Amara gripped his shoulder. What do we do? Wait, he said simply. Seconds stretched into minutes. The rain pounded harder, masking distant footsteps. Suddenly, the door rattled. Once, twice, then burst open. A flash of light. A shout. Gunfire cracked through the night. Amara screamed as David pulled her down, shielding her behind the wheelchair. The guards returned fire, shouting commands she couldn't understand. Splinters flew from the wooden walls as bullets tore through them. David reached into the side compartment of his chair and pulled out a small metal case. Inside was a sleek device with glowing lines, unlike anything she'd ever seen. Hold this, he said, pressing it into her trembling hands. What is it? Proof, he said. The only thing they want more than me. Before she could ask more, one of the guards fell with a grunt, clutching his chest. The second grabbed David's chair. We have to move, sir. They pushed toward the back door. Amara followed, clutching the metal device tightly. Rain hit her face as they stumbled into the storm, gunfire echoing behind them. David's wheelchair bounced over the muddy ground, his breathing sharp but focused. Keep going, he shouted. Amara slipped but caught herself, clutching the device to her chest. David, don't stop. Behind them, shadows moved, men in black chasing fast. Lightning split the sky, lighting up their faces for an instant. They weren't strangers to violence. They reached the riverbank. The current was strong, wild, merciless. David turned to her, his expression resolute. Throw it in. What? The device. They can't have it. But... Amara, trust me. With trembling hands, she hurled it into the river. It vanished beneath the raging water, gone within seconds. David exhaled, relief flashing briefly across his face, before a gunshot ripped through the storm. He jerked back, the sound echoing in her ears. David, she screamed, grabbing his arm. Blood darkened the sleeve of his jacket. He winced, his eyes fluttering but still sharp. I'm fine, he muttered. We have to keep moving. The remaining guard fired back, shouting into his calm extraction. Now! Moments later, a drone whirred overhead, its lights blinking red as it descended. A steel cable dropped. Get him up, the guard yelled. Amara helped as best she could, tears mixing with rain. The drone lifted David and the guard skyward toward another hovering vehicle. A hand reached down for her. Come on. But before she could grab it, a figure emerged from the shadows behind her, tall, silent, and deadly. A cold hand gripped her arm, pulling her back. She gasped, twisting to see a man in a dark coat, water dripping from his hair. His smile was calm, almost gentle. You shouldn't have thrown it, he said softly. Now, you've made things complicated. Amara struggled, but his grip tightened. Above her, David shouted her name, his voice breaking through the rain. The man looked up, meeting David's gaze. She's coming with us, he said, almost politely. The drone's lights flared brighter. David's face contorted with fury and fear. If you touch her... But the man only smiled wider. You should have stayed dead, David. A gun pressed against her back. Amara froze. The rain poured harder, drowning out everything. The shouts, the engines, the chaos. And as the drone began to rise, the world seemed to spin into a blur of light, sound, and storm. Then darkness. Cold hands dragged her through the mud. Voices murmured around her, unfamiliar and cruel. Somewhere in the distance, she heard David's voice again, desperate, fading. The world was nothing but darkness and noise when Amara opened her eyes. Her head throbbed, and her wrists burned against the ropes binding them. The room smelled of metal, oil, and fear. She was in some kind of warehouse, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb that swung above her like a pendulum. Outside, the storm had quieted, but inside her, a storm raged louder than ever. Her pulse quickened when she saw him, the man from the river, the one who had dragged her away. He stood before a steel table, his back turned as he spoke into a phone. His voice was calm, deliberate, the kind of voice used to giving orders that ended lives. "Yes," he said coldly. "We have her. He'll come for her. He always does." Amara's chest tightened. David. The man turned, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "You're awake," he said smoothly, setting the phone down. "Good. I was beginning to think you were stronger asleep than awake." "Where's David?" she demanded, her voice trembling. He smirked. "Alive. For now. But only because we need him to finish what he started." Amara struggled against the ropes, her wrists bleeding slightly from the friction. "He'll come for me," she whispered, though her voice betrayed a hint of fear. The man stepped closer, crouching to meet her gaze. "I'm counting on it." Hours passed like lifetimes. The door creaked open occasionally as guards came and went. Amara's mind replayed everything, the lies, the love, the chase, the blood. Despite it all, she couldn't bring herself to hate him. David had risked everything to protect her, and somewhere out there, she knew he was planning something. And she was right. Miles away, in a hidden safe house deep in the forest, David sat in silence as a medic stitched a wound in his arm. His face was pale, but his eyes burned with purpose. The guard who'd escaped with him stood nearby, nervous. "Sir, we lost her." They were waiting. It was a setup. David's hands clenched around the armrest of his wheelchair. "I know. We can regroup, call for backup." "There's no time," he interrupted, his voice sharp as glass. "They'll use her as leverage to get what they want. I won't let that happen." He rolled toward a metallic case lying on the table and flipped it open. Inside was another device, smaller than the one Amara had thrown into the river. This one glowed faintly, lines of light pulsing like a heartbeat. "She doesn't know it," he said softly. "But the one she threw wasn't the real one. That was just bait." The guard blinked. "Sir, then you still have it?" David nodded. "And it's time to finish this." Night fell like a heavy curtain. Rain began again, softer this time, whispering against the windows of the warehouse where Amara was kept. The guards grew restless, their footsteps echoing down the corridor. Amara listened carefully, every muscle tense. Something in the air had changed, a stillness, a waiting. Then, suddenly, the lights went out. The bulb above her shattered, plunging the room into complete darkness. Shouts erupted outside. "What's going on?" "Check the generator." Amara's heart pounded. Somewhere amid the chaos, she heard it. The soft hum of a drone, then a sharp crack, followed by the scream of tearing metal. "David," she whispered. The main door exploded inward, and a flashbang lit up the room. Blinded, the guard stumbled, firing blindly into the smoke. Through the haze, a silhouette appeared. A man in a wheelchair, rolling forward with a weapon mounted to the armrest and a look in his eyes that silenced everything around him. "Let her go." David's voice thundered, commanding and cold. The man who had taken her, the one who had smiled so calmly before, stepped forward, unflinching. "You just don't know when to die, do you, David?" "I tried that once," David said, wheeling closer. "Didn't like it." The man laughed. "You think you can stop this? You built something too powerful to destroy. Every major corporation, every government, every spy network, they all want it. You can't hide it forever." David's expression darkened. I'm not hiding it. I'm ending it. Before the man could react, David pressed a button on his chair. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a small silver sphere that emitted a low, vibrating hum. The guards froze, uncertainty flickering across their faces. What is that? The man demanded. The real system, David replied. The one you killed for. He held the device in his palm, its glow intensifying. You wanted control, power. But you never understood. This was never built to serve anyone. It was meant to free information from control, to expose corruption, to end the kind of greed that destroyed people like us. The man's smile faltered. You wouldn't. Oh, I would. He pressed a sequence on the device, and suddenly every screen, every phone, every network within 100 miles began to flicker alive. Hidden files, secret transactions, government cover-ups, everything the powerful had buried, streamed freely into the world. The man lunged forward, fury in his eyes. You fool! You've doomed us all. David looked up at him, calm and certain. No, I've just given the world the truth. Gunfire erupted again. The man's shot missed, shattering the wall behind David. The guards panicked, some fleeing, others shooting wildly. Amara crawled across the floor, cutting her wrists free with a shard of glass. She reached David, pulling him behind a fallen table for cover. David, she shouted over chaos. What did you do? He smiled faintly, blood on his lip. What I should have done years ago. The building began to shake. The generator overheated, sparks flying. The storm outside roared like thunder made of vengeance. The man staggered forward, eyes wild. You think this changes anything? There will always be someone worse. David looked up at him, his voice low and steady. Then I hope they learn from this. Before the man could fire again, one final blast tore through the ceiling. A piece of debris struck him, knocking him down. The air filled with smoke and sirens as the roof began to collapse. Amara wrapped her arms around David. We have to go. He nodded weakly. Together, she pushed his chair through the flames, out into the storm. The rain hit their faces like glass, but she didn't stop, not until they reached the road, where the forest opened wide and sirens wailed in the distance. David's breathing was shallow now, his strength fading. Amara, he whispered. Listen to me. Don't you dare, she said fiercely, tears mixing with the rain. You're not leaving me. He smiled softly, his hand finding hers. The system, it's done. They can't control it anymore. I made sure of that. Stop talking like this, she cried. You promised me we'd build a life together. He looked at her, eyes glimmering like fading stars. We did. Every moment with you was life. David, please. But before she could say more, he lifted a trembling hand and touched her cheek. You believed in me when I was nothing. That's what gave me the strength to be something again. Promise me. Don't let them bury what we've done. Tell the world. Amara gripped his hand tighter. I promise. His eyes softened, and for a fleeting moment, he looked at peace. Then his head tilted back, his breath leaving him in a whisper swallowed by the rain. Amara clung to him, her cries echoing into the storm until the flashing red and blue lights arrived. Paramedics rushed toward them, voices shouting commands, but Amara didn't move. She sat there in the rain, holding the man everyone had once laughed at, the man who'd saved the world by losing everything. Hours later, the world woke up to chaos. News stations around the globe reported the leak. Hidden crimes were exposed. Corrupt leaders fell. Companies that had thrived on silence crumbled under the weight of truth. The mysterious leak had one signature, a single phrase embedded in the code. For Amara, for truth. Months passed. Amara stood at the edge of the river where she had once thrown the decoy device. The water shimmered under the setting sun, quiet now, peaceful. She wore a black coat, her hair tied back, a small pendant around her neck, the last thing David had given her. In her hand was a letter, the last message he'd written, hidden inside his wheelchair. His handwriting was steady. Even in the end, if you're reading this, it means I finally kept my promise. Don't mourn me, Amara. Live. The world will forget my name soon enough, but it will remember what we stood for. You taught me that love isn't about what someone has, but who they become when they have nothing left. That's the only truth worth dying for. Amara folded the letter carefully and let it drift into the river. The water carried it away, gentle and endless, like time itself. She took a deep breath and smiled faintly through her tears. Behind her, the wind whispered through the trees, carried with a faint echo of a familiar voice, calm, steady, and full of quiet strength. And though David was gone, his legacy lived on in every truth that had finally come to light, in every voice that refused to be silenced, and in the heart of the woman who had once believed in a poor man in a wheelchair before the world knew who he truly was. Amara turned from the river, her eyes filled not with grief, but fire, because she knew his story wasn't over. It had only just begun.